I feel like I've been ragging on Google and the Pixel Fold a lot lately. And because of some of those negative things, I've been spending even more time than usual with my OnePlus Open. And while I've been doing that, I have noticed a handful of things that are just kind of annoyances to me. So, in the spirit of ragging on devices, I'm going to go over a handful of the things that annoy me the most about the OnePlus Open. I want to kind of drive this point home first, though. This is a fantastic device. It is one of the better devices I have ever used. I overall think for the vast majority of people, this is probably the best foldable device that you can buy. So I don't want you to get the wrong impression that I don't like this thing or that I think it's a bad phone. I think it is a fantastic phone. Again, for most people, probably the one to go after. The price is right, the camera, the build quality of the screens. It's a great device, but it isn't without flaws. I'm going to tell you some of mine. So let's start off with one here that some people are going to notice and be bothered by, and still other people will likely have never even noticed that this is occurring. And we're talking about the way the animations work on the OnePlus Open. Let me kind of give you a quick demonstration. So if I launch an application like Threads, watch as it opens. It's going to zoom out of that icon, and when I go home, it's going to go back into its icon. It'll even do this when it's on the taskbar. That is awesome. That's exactly what you want to see. Nice and smooth, consistent, good stuff. But with other applications, let's try firing up the Google page from this Google widget. Watch what happens. It zooms into the center of the screen. It seems to come out of the search bar but then back into the screen. Other applications like Overdrop, which is what this widget is, just sort of flash into existence and then zoom back into the center of the screen. Now that first bit I believe is a problem with Overdrop, and my proof of that is that on my Pixel Fold the same thing happens. But when you go home, rather than it zooming into the center of the screen, it zooms into the widget. That's what I want to see happen, and because it doesn't, what I'm getting at is we have inconsistent animations. This is one of these things that seems small, and for most people it is small, but for me it adds to this sort of almost subliminal feeling of jankiness. My Pixel Fold continues to feel smoother than this device because the animations are just all very, very consistent and nice and smooth. We're so close here. We're close, but we're not quite there. Something else that bugs me a little bit is how you close all applications. If you swipe up and hold, you've got this convenient close all button. And now, if I click that, it's going to close all these apps that I have running. But I almost never do that because these phones have a ton of RAM and they know how to kind of handle the background processes. The only time I really do that is if something is acting strange, right? And typically, that's the application that is in the opened place, right? Like sometimes Wise will act a little bit weird. I need to close it and open it back up again. But let me show you what happens. If you have an application that's open, and you do this, it's going to close every app but the one that you have open. I don't know why it does that. Maybe they have some reason, but I end up having to do an extra step where basically you swipe up and you throw away that one app, and then you go up and you close all. Or you go home and then close all. Regardless, there's an extra step. There may be a reason why they do this, but for me, it's weird and it's hard for me to get used to. Here's something else that is a little bit weird and hard to get used to. Let's fire back up Threads just as an application that is open. And we're going to do a two-finger swipe down, which I still love. I still think that that is absolutely brilliant. And let's fire up YouTube. So we're sitting at this YouTube homepage, and let's say that now I want to change what app is over here. So I'm going to go into my app drawer, and let's just use Wise because it's nice and simple. When I drag this app over, not every time, probably not even most times, but occasionally, I accidentally open this thing up in a floating window. And that's because the area where it becomes a floating window is here. But look how far over you can go, and it stays a floating window. That's, to me, maybe a little bit too far. It's just my own muscle memory. I end up going right here, just like you saw. I'm slightly off. Sometimes if you just do this, it'll flip back to being a floating window, and it's too close, and I wind up opening it, and I go, no, that's not what I wanted. I didn't want a floating window. Again, not a huge issue, but it is something that does irritate me from time to time. On this same screen, I am also really used to a double click of that middle bar to switch which app is where. In this, you have to click and then swap sides. That's just something I'm not used to, and it's been difficult for me to adjust to. One more thing in the split screen view that also does bug me a little bit. It's the behavior of when apps decide if they want to be small or if they want to be expanded. There seems to be some inconsistency with this, or minimum, just some behavior that just doesn't make a ton of sense to me. So some apps can do this. They can shrink back and forth. But some apps, for some reason, can only launch in their expanded view. So if I go back into my drawer here, I'm going to grab YouTube Studio and we'll see what happens here. Scroll down so you don't see anything that's particularly private information, but there's no way to shrink this. And there's a few apps on my phone that you cannot shrink. So unlike other apps on my phone, I can't properly split screen these. I have to be in this open canvas view where I'm switching back and forth, and I don't know why that is. Why can I not shrink this application? Moreover, let's grab YouTube and bring it up here, and let's expand YouTube. Let's now get rid of YouTube. I'm doing this for a reason, and let's bring it back up into the split screen again. I don't like that it remembers that it was in this view last. Some people might like that. To me, I would much prefer minimum a setting that would say launch apps in the shrunken view by default. Something else that I did remember though as I was doing this is the fact that I can only have 4 icons down here of my choosing on the taskbar. If I jump into settings, you can go to main screen, and then on the taskbar, you can do some things. You can get rid of the files, you can get rid of the app library, get rid of the recent apps and suggested apps, and you would think, I've freed up so much space. Surely to goodness, I can put more things. No, you can't. You cannot put more things down there. That is all you can have. I don't know why that is. It doesn't make sense to me. Give us more apps. So the next thing I want to talk about are bugs. I can't demonstrate probably any of these for you because they pick and choose when they're going to show their faces. But one of the ones I've seen in the last couple of days, a couple of times, which is kind of odd, is my taskbar just being in random places. I've had an application open and the taskbar is sitting up at the middle of the screen. Very, very odd. I went home, went back here, went back into the app, and everything was fine. But it's just kind of odd. Now, of course, I just went home, went back into the app, and everything was fine. So it's not a huge deal, but what I kind of want to underscore for you is that compared to my Pixel Fold, compared to some of my other devices around the house, the OnePlus Open still does have a higher prevalence of these sorts of bugs. I also remembered in editing here that I've had my taskbar sort of be on top of things. It's in the right place, but UI elements are below the taskbar, and you have to do the long press to hide it and then a long press to bring it back whenever you're done. Just a little bit janky. I've also had the app drawer act a little bit weird, where I have picked a letter, and rather than going to that letter, it's scrolled a little bit, but not actually to that letter. I caught that in a video the other day. I don't think I edited it out either, so that may be visible somewhere, but it just does that sometimes. This one hasn't happened as much since the Android 14 update, so maybe it's been addressed. But when you're in your notification drawer here, first off, I don't like that it expands it this far, right? Like a normal phone, it would only be about that much, and that leaves more room for notifications. On the Open, it takes up almost half the screen, or I guess round about half the screen, which means that if you have more than 2 notifications, you'll have to do this half swipe up thing, which you can't do unless there's a notification there. And what would happen a lot is I would need to address the bottom one, and I would try and do that little half swipe up, and I would just close the notification drawer, and that would be kind of frustrating. I would end up having to clear things before I could get to the notification I wanted to address. A couple more weird ones here I'll just quickly touch on. If I actually go into one of these folders and let's just go to edit, it'll show you the custom icons that you have, and that's great. But the problem is that if you keep scrolling, you're looking for an icon, you're trying to find the right one. You get to a certain point, and as you can see here, you just can't go any further. And there are way more icons than that. This is just unfortunately bugged out. And likewise, something else that just does not seem to work correctly is the ability to add icons to your desktop, or I should add them from another app. I'll give you a good example. Maybe you want to use Google Weather. If I click on the little 3 dots here and I do add to home screen, it thinks it's done this, but it hasn't because it's broken. The only way to keep this functional is to go into your home settings and make sure Add Apps to Home Screen is turned on. Once that happens, it will start adding icons. So anytime you want to add a shortcut from an app to your home screen, it will not work if you do not have that setting enabled. That can only be described as a bug. And unfortunately, the bugs I'm describing have persisted, and that kind of brings me to another thing that annoys me. We just got Android 14 in North America. Some regions are likely still waiting. That was not only entirely too late for a device this expensive compared to its contemporaries, but it also did nothing to address most of these bugs. Now, the one I was talking about on the cover display when you're trying to get to your notifications, perhaps that one has been addressed. I haven't seen it just yet, but maybe it's been addressed. Maybe it's fixed. But the other ones have been there since day one, and they have not addressed them. Software support, not the strong suit for OnePlus anymore. Something else I forgot to mention is the fact that on your home screen, you can't adjust the grid. Why can I not adjust the grid? Even Google with their pixels allow you to do this. Just let me have 5 icons next to each other, and I'm a happy camper. I've had to go this weird route of using expanded folders to kind of get sort of where I want, but I need the extra space for the widgets. There's a layout that I want to use. I'm, coming from the Pixel Fold, and I have this layout that I came up with that I absolutely adore. It's perfect, and I cannot recreate it on my OnePlus Open because I can't adjust the grid layout, and that is annoying. And the last thing I want to touch on is something that is in regard to the camera, which overall I think is probably the best camera on any foldable, but there is a particular spot where it often falls short. I take a lot of portrait photos of my dogs because I'm one of those people, and this device does a great job with those portraits unless there is any teeny tiny amount of movement, and then you get photos like this. I pulled this out of my trash because that's where it belongs. It's just blurry. I like the way they handle blur. I like the way that the detail tends to look with this camera, but more often than not, I will grab my Pixel Fold and it will do a better job capturing the dog in focus. In fact, sometimes what I will do if I have this phone in my pocket is I will actually turn on action mode, which can be seen up there at the top, take the photo, and then go into Google Photos and add the portrait blur if I really want it to be there, because that mode will keep things pretty much in focus. That is also annoying. So those are sort of my biggest points of pain with the OnePlus Open. Some of them are bugs, some of them are maybe questionable software choices, and some of them are just me struggling to adapt to the device even months on. Let me know if you have anything like this in the comments down below. Do you share any of these with me? Do you have some others that I maybe did not mention? Or are some of these things that you're just shaking your head and saying, Shane, that is clearly on you? And indeed, some of them likely are. Let me know in the comments down below. I will see you on the next one. And until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.